in psychology as a patient receiving psychiatric medications, one of the ways that I like to think about mood swings or mania and depression is in reference to the different parts of the brain. Mania is an elevation in mood that is, but it's also an elevation in arousal in the brain. And it depends on where it is. And so different parts of the brain have different points where they will be aroused, whereas other parts won't. And so it all depends on how your body is using those functions that your brain is supplying or your brain is commanding. When you're depressed, you have a depletion of activity in that brain region. And when you go too low or too high on that spectrum of mania and depression, you can actually have damage to your brain in those specific parts of the brain that are over-aroused or under-aroused. And that's when you get emotional disturbances, which can affect a lot of things, such as the fight or flight response. But it's all, it's like a 6-cylinder engine in a Ferrari. And I'm not much of a car person, but that's how I picture it. So when you're thinking about sensory deprivation, the same metaphor applies. To extend it, your brain will compensate for activity that is lost or parts of the brain that are damaged or senses that are no longer active due to damage, or like, for instance, if you're wearing a blindfold or headphones. So the brain naturally learns to compensate for these things. And so it's like one piston goes up, the other one goes down. That one goes up, the other one goes down. And so when you're dealing with arousal patterns in the brain, that's a good way to think about it. And it's a good way to think about mood swings and mania and depression, emotional disturbances. I kind of think about emotional disturbances as being like, okay, gravity has an effect on time and space. But if you go a little too far on that plane, you're going to end up with a tear in space-time. Not really how it works, is oversimplified, but it's a good way to get started on thinking about all that. Sensory deprivation is one of those things that is another way that you can think about it. And so different people have different brains, and different subparts of those different regions of the brain have might be active, whereas the whole brain region is not. The whole idea is actually very interesting when you think about it, as far as the meds that you're taking, because psychiatric meds, they are trying to put those different arousals or lack thereof into a sense of a baseline, not equilibrium, but equilibrium, like a baseline. So that's one way to think about the brain.